Hi, welcome to Prince to Polka Dots. Today we'd like to introduce you to Dashwood Studio's Jardin Anglais collection. The collection was designed by Pippa Shaw, drawing on her love of English country garden flowers and memories of lazy days spent in France with her family. The collection has a really romantic and dreamy feel to it, and we've already put it to good use in this Lone Star quilt. A Lone Star quilt really is a thing of great beauty, and from a quilter's perspective, what makes it even more special are the sewing techniques used to make the quilt. These techniques make piecing the quilt together much simpler and quicker than you would imagine. The whole front of this quilt, the star, the blocking, and even this border that runs along all four sides only took 3 evenings to cut and sew together. Can you believe it, looking at the intricate detail on that quilt? We really are excited about this quilt, and we can't wait to share all that we've learnt with you. We'll be adding a step-by-step tutorial for the quilt to our blog in October, which we are renaming Sewtober, as we plan to encourage you all to try new sewing techniques, challenges and patterns during this month. So do sign up for our newsletter and you'll receive updates and emails whenever articles are added to the blog. We will also add a kit to our main website for this actual quilt front, so should you want to make an exact copy of this quilt, you'll be able to buy a kit that will help you do that, and that will be launched at the same time as the tutorial. To register for an account to get the emails, you need to go to our main website, princetopolkadots.co.uk, and sign up for an account. You don't have to put any card details in. All you're doing is adding your email address and selecting that you would like to receive the newsletter. As well as this wonderful Lone Star quilt pattern, we will be adding a log cabin quilt as you go pattern to our blog in Sewtober. This is one block from the log cabin quilt that we'll be doing. Quilt as you go is a very special quilting method which is different to the standard method where you piece all the fabrics together and then attach that as one whole sort of sheet of quilting to your batting and your back fabric. With Quilt as you go, for almost the whole process, you are only working on squares this big. Once you have completed all of the squares, that's when you sew them all together to make something as big as you want it to be, a lap quilt, a duvet cover, whatever you want it to be. But most of the time that you're working on squares that are this big. They're therefore much more manageable, and that makes them great either for complete beginners, because you're working on mini quilts essentially for most of the process. For those of you who perhaps have totally got the hang now of piecing the fabrics together, that's sewing these individual strips together, but you want to work on your quilting being the sewing that you do on the top of the quilt after you've pieced it together. So if you fancy perfecting your quilting technique, the reason this is good for you is because most of the time you are working on 15 or 13-inch squares, and they are much easier to handle on your sewing machine. I mean, you can imagine trying to put this through your machine, free motion or up and down, is going to be so much easier than trying to get the whole of this quilt under your sewing machine in one go. A fun idea is to quilt as you go all of your blocks. We're going to use 16 of these blocks for a lap size quilt, and then in terms of the quilting, the top stitching that you do, you can do a different quilt pattern on each of those 16. So you can make it a sampler, but instead of a sampler of different blocks, make it a sampler of different quilting techniques. It will give you a chance to try new ones, practice old ones, perfect your skills, and do it all in a much less stressful way than the stress of trying to quilt the middle of here with this all bunched up in the middle of your sewing machine, and the fear that the layers are going to come apart. Hopefully I've convinced you that Quilt as you go is the way to go. If you are an established quilter and you've never done Quilt as you go, this still could be the quilt for you, not only because it comes together quickly, so it's very stress-free, but also because you use 13 and 15-inch squares of batting, it's a chance to use up your scraps. That's one of the reasons that we're doing it here at Prince to Polka Dots. We have lots of offcuts of batting from smaller quilts that we've made, and now we're able to use those. We're chopping them up into 15-inch and 13-inch squares, and then when we finish this quilt, they'll have been sewn back together and repurposed to make one lap-size quilt. If you want to have a go and you're one of the people who has lots of offcuts of batting and wadding and want to get started, you need 4 15-inch squares and 12 13-inch squares to make a lap-size quilt. The 15-inch squares are going to run along the top of the quilt, So if you want a wider quilt, then just add more 15-inch blocks for the top, and then 3 times the number below. Well, it won't be 3, it depends on the size of quilt you want to make. If you start with the ones that I've suggested, I think that would be the way to go, and then you can add more once you've got the process started and you know the direction of travel. So that would be 4 15-inch squares and 12 13-inch squares. So just repeat that one more time. If you want to get prepared, you need 4 15-inch squares of batting. This is batting or wadding, same thing, different names, and 12 13-inch squares of batting or wadding. The fabric we put on the front is cut into 2-inch wide strips. You can buy all our fabrics pre-cut 2 inches wide. So if you would like to use the Jardin Anglais collection to do this alongside us, go to the website, find the Jardin Anglais bundle, fabric bundle, main fabric bundle, and order your fabrics pre-cut into 2-inch wide strips. A jelly roll's worth will be plenty. Otherwise, if you want to use your stash at home, start cutting those strips of fabric 2 inches wide. You need somewhere between 36 and 40 for the quilts, and then you'll be ready to go. So hopefully you'll join us for that. If you do take part, it will be lovely to see your results. Just hashtag us in on Instagram with Prints to Polka Dots, or post your images on our Facebook page at Prints to Polka Dots, or email us, or try and attach a photograph to a comment on the blog. We love to see and share all your comments and all your pictures, so please do that. Okay, so now I have in front of me the collection we're looking at today, Jardin Anglais. The collection is made up of 8 prints. They are on medium weight cotton and they are 110 centimetres, 44 inches wide. As with all cotton fabric, if you're going to make something you're going to want to wash, then you need to pre-wash the fabric before you start to sew, because it will shrink. Cotton shrinks anywhere between 3 and 6%. So that means if you have a metre of fabric, you could lose up to 6 centimetres when you first wash it. You don't want your curtains to shrink by 6 centimetres and be 6 centimetres off the ground, and believe me, trying to shrink yourself by 6 centimetres is hard going. The only time that you definitely don't want to pre-wash your fabrics is if you're going to quilt, because when you quilt, what you do is you wash the quilt once it's all put together, and that first wash, all the cotton fabric sort of shrinks up just that little bit, and it creates this slightly wrinkly effect, which just gives that aged sort of vintage look. So if you're quilting, don't pre-wash. If you're going to make something that will never be washed, like maybe a purse or a book cover, you don't need to wash. But if what you're making is going to go in the wash, pre-wash your fabrics. Okay, so let's have a look at these fabrics one at a time. This first fabric is covered in nasturtiums. They are gorgeous little flowers popping up all over the place. The fabric has no particular direction. There we go. And the fabric includes all the main colours in the collection. The only one missing from the collection that's not in here is grey. So we have these lovely golden yellow colours. We also have creams and whites. We have blues of different hues. We have teals. We have this sort of, we're calling it blush pink. And we also have some lime green, mint lime greens, and this brownish colour green. So there's lots of different colours going on in this fabric. And I think she's really picked up the essence of those flowers perfectly on this print. If you ever have a print and you're not sure what colours are in it or what colours go, have a look up the salvage of the fabric, and here you'll see these coloured dots. These dots represent all the colours that are in the fabric. So whether it's just for your own kind of sanity check of checking what the colours are, or in case you're trying to match up to some other fabrics, looking at these dots is a good place to start. Okay, so that's Flowers on Blue, it's called on our website, rather than forgotten the name already of the flowers. There we go. So next one up we have is Daffodils on Blue. Now let me just get this the right way up. This one drives me potty, not because it's not beautiful, it is beautiful, but I can't work out if there is a direction to this print or not, and I will show you it the other way up in a moment so you can make your own decision. So this is on a dark blue background. I would describe it as a military or a petrol blue. It's not navy, it's not as dark as navy. And then the flowers, the daffodils on here, are in cream and a golden mustardy colour, the blush pink, I think that's most of them, and they're all various sizes and shapes, just like daffodils are when you see them out and about. The green grasses are green, but they are greens that are towards the blue end of the green spectrum, so just bear that in mind. So let's have a look at this direction. There's the fabric this way up, which I think you look at it and you think there's no way it's going to look right the other way, and then I'm going to turn it the other way, and then you think there's no way it'll look right the other way. I think this is directionless, but I'll let you make your own mind up. It does drive me potty. The next fabric is my favourite fabric in this collection. Wait till you see this one. This one is flowers on blush pink. Now, I think this is so luxurious looking, this print. That pink that she's chosen, that Pip has picked for this, it's a very unusual pink, but it's a gorgeous pink. You'll see when I put another print next to it later, which is very pink, you'll see that this is a slightly apricot-y pink or a peachy pink rather than a true pink, but it's just so decadent. I go to afternoon tea in London to a posh hotel once a year with my mum. She very, very generously takes me out for afternoon tea, and I could imagine a tea dress made from this, and I could float around any of the establishments in that, and you would feel like the bee's knees. I'd feel like a little girl all over again, and my mum would have to be careful that I wasn't found twirling around near the piano making my skirt fly around. It just is gorgeous. So this has this pink background, which we're going to call blush pink for this presentation, and then on that it has these green grasses with white flower heads, a bit like I don't know what you call them, the flowers which have the white heads that you blow. You used to blow them and go 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. It reminds me of those, probably going to be dandelions or something daft. And then they have these stems coming off them, these wiry stems. Now these stems, all 90% of them start down here and work up to the flower head, but every now and again you find one pointing downwards. So because the majority of them go up, I would treat this as a directional print. There you go. I have to look on the Collect website and see which pattern I'm going to make that dress out of. So next up we have one of Pippa's favourites from the collection. She's planning on making a top out of this fabric, and this is bluegrass with dewdrops. So just move over slightly. There we go. Now this is on a very white background. I know that might sound like a daft thing to say, but most whites of fabrics are sort of a soft white, whereas this is a crisp white background, so just bear that in mind. If you can see the selvage on this side, you'll notice that there isn't really a discernible difference between the white of the selvage and the white in the main fabric. The bluegrasses are a light blue, a little bit darker than a sky blue, but not much, and then the dewdrops around the grasses are in a mustardy golden yellow tone, 2 types of teal, and the blush pink. So there you go, another one that possibly has 2 directions, but the more I look at it, the more I think, no, this is a directional print. But I will just show you it the other way up, because I really can't decide. So indecisive. Okay, so that's the other way up. So now that looks upside down to me. I think this is a directional print. Okay, so that's bluegrasses with dewdrops. The next print has a really fun name. The next print is called Snail Trails on Blue, and you'll see why when I lift it up. It's a really beautiful blue colour, the sort of colour that's a bit like swimming pools. You can imagine some hot beach somewhere and this being the sea and just wanting to dive in. Look at that. And you can see why it's called Snail Trails, all those lovely dotty trails running across the fabric. This fabric has no clear direction, and I would describe it as an abstract print, as in if you don't know the name of the fabric you wouldn't realise what the image was, but that makes it really kind of versatile in terms of where and what you can use it for. It's very grown-up looking in Jardin Anglais, but imagine if you had some pirate prints and you could use this as the sea. So you really can put this use this in any sort of age range and produce beautiful results. There we go. Because of the abstract pattern, it's also very forgiving. If you try and cut this and you go slightly wonky, it's not going to show. Or if you sew it slightly off, it's not going to show. A really forgiving print. The next one's the other end of the spectrum in terms of being forgiving or not, because although it's not a stripe, it's almost a stripe. And these are tall flowers on the same sort of military petrol blue as the print from earlier. So don't be put off just because I've said it's harder to work with. Because it's harder doesn't mean it's difficult, it's just harder. It just means when you cut across or sew across this way or this way, you just have to be a bit more careful to cut accurately, because otherwise it could look a bit wonky. Now the colours on this fabric, apart from the blue background, we have these tall flowers, and they appear in off-white, a dark indigo kind of a blue, pencil drawings in cream, pencil drawings in the same dark blue, and then every now and again you get a solid flower in the blush pink, but it's almost like a blush pink wash. It's very subtle. So this one here has the pink in it, and this one here, and this one here. I will fold it up and hold the bulk closer, and hopefully you'll be able to see them. It's another one of those secrets in this fabric collection that I didn't notice until after I'd made the quilt behind, and then I spotted it. There we go. Let me see if I can see. I don't think there. Oh yes. So just there. Okay. So lovely print, just be careful when you're working with that one. This one we've called Pencil Drawings of Roses, and this is on an off-white background. The pencil drawings of the roses are in a blue, which is slightly lighter than a navy, the blush pink and grey. Look at that. It doesn't have a particular direction. It has a strong pattern repeat, so you may want to just be careful when cutting out to make sure you try and stay as straight as you can. But apart from that, just another gorgeous print that really represents English country flowers beautifully with that muted colour palette. It just looks so grown up. The last print that I have to show you in the collection today is also from the Altitude collection. So Pippa's last collection for Dashwood was called Altitude, and one of the most popular prints in that was Soaring Birds, and she did that on blue. So for this collection they've brought it back, but this time on this lovely grey, which is much more suited to this collection. I think you can probably see why it was so popular the first time round. It's covered in these, I think they look like swallows, but I guess they're just birds, sort of soaring all over the fabric. What you can't see at first glance, I certainly didn't notice for a couple of weeks, is around the heads of these birds there are teeny tiny little dots of blush pink. It's almost like somebody's thrown seed up in the air and the birds are all chasing it. So I will fold this bolt back up and show you that one closer to the camera, so hopefully you'll be able to pick out those little tiny pink dots. It's a bit like Where's Wally, this collection. There's something to find on almost every print. Right, there we go. Hopefully you can spot those. So they are all the fabrics in the collection. We've used all of them in this collection except for the birds, and the only ones we've added are the white round the outside, and in the middle here we've added a twist, a Dashwood twist called Apple, which I'll show you in a moment. If you buy the kit for the quilt, it will come as in the quilt with the blush and without the birds. But if you would rather have the birds, if you put a note on the order, we're more than happy to make the swap. So here is the collection again, and now I'm just going to show you some solid colours that we think work well with this collection. So I'll just grab those. Oh, here we go. So these are Kona solids. We really rate Kona. If you're dressmaking, you don't have to use Kona solids. You can use cheaper fabrics, cheaper solids, because you can use a thinner fabric. But if you're lining a bag or making a quilt, these are brilliant because the cheaper ones, sometimes you can see the seam allowances and things underneath of the other fabrics, whereas with the Kona solids everything remains hidden, which is just what you need, particularly if you've spent a long time quilting. You don't want all those little bits in the middle to show. So running through these colours, hopefully you can see those next to the main collection. We have Seafoam. Seafoam doesn't appear in the collection, but because it's a muted tone, we think it balances well and it goes well with the rest of these fabrics. Then we have one which is called Pale Flesh. Now Pale Flesh is lighter than this pink here in this collection, but again a muted tone, so it fits in well with the vibe of the collection. Then we have Pure White, which of course goes with almost anything. Then Indigo Blue. So this blue is quite close to the very darkest blues, which just sort of appear in flashes through the collection. It's not a match to the background of here, but it's great as a kind of full stop in your make. So a lining of a bag or the binding of a quilt, this dark blue can really can kind of frame the other fabrics that you're using it with. And this fellow here is called Grello, and Grello is proving to be a very versatile print. You wouldn't think it to look at it because it's quite a bright, vibrant colour, but recently every time a new collection has come and we've taken it to our solids section, this one has gone with it, despite the fact that the collections we've had in have been anything from this lovely muted colour palette to a blue and white collection called Copenhagen, and even Club Tropicana, which is jungle colours and very, very bright. But this Grello has gone with all of them. This Grello is the closest colour we can find. It's an almost exact match to the goldy mustardy colour in some of these fabrics. The one that's right at the bottom that you can't see very well, I'll try and lift it up a little bit, this one. So this yellow here is very, very close to Grello, so that's a great tie-in. And if I just move that out of the way, you can see it interacting here. It goes really well with these daffodils as well. So these big flowers and the daffodils tie in really well. Well, this is the twist, the apple twist, but it's similar. I'll hold this up. Here you go. So that colour goes well with the fabrics. So you can buy those Kona solids as an independent bundle. I think they go really well for anything. You could use them even all on their own. I think they would make some really nice ice cream toned bunting. So those Kona solids can be bought in a bundle on their own or a bundle with the main Jardin Anglais collection. Put those to one side. And finally, I just want to share with you our pick of the Dashwood twists. Now, twist fabrics are a staple in the Dashwood collections. It's a collection in its own right, and it's made of many different colours. I'm going to try and get everything shot together here. I'm not sure I'm going to manage, but we'll have a go. Right, I think you can just about get the bottom there in shot. So running through from the top, I'll just show you what one is actually. So this is the blush version, and you can see it's made up of a base colour, and then it has these dots all over the surface, and the dots on all but one of them are tone on tone, so they're a slightly lighter version of the background colour, and they swirl and twist, hence the name, all the way around the fabric back and forth. So they're a great alternative to a solid if you want something with a bit more depth or a bit more interest, and they're also brilliant for backing quilts because they're not as boring as a plain fabric. If you're quilting, so this stitch here, if you're going for straight lines and they're not perfectly straight, all those dots will also disguise that a bit. So if you're a new quilter, they're kinder to work with because they're more forgiving. And if you're fancying free motion quilting, you can follow the curves and use them as a pattern. And then on the front, you'll look like the most established free motion quilter when really you had a pattern to follow all along. So that's the nature of a twist and why we like to work with them. But now we'll run through the colours. So I'll just hold this for a moment longer. This is the pink. This is the lightest pink that they do at the moment. And next to this, you can see how different the pink is in this fabric. So this does work well with the whole collection because it's quite a muted pink. I'll put it on the top there. You see, it does work with the collection, but it doesn't necessarily work with this one on its own. So I wouldn't use it with this one in isolation, but with the whole collection, it just ups the pink factor. Then we have the white. The white still has the same pattern going on. It's a tone on tone, white on white, and it almost has a pearlescent quality to it. Next up we have gold. Now this was the only one that we have which isn't tone on tone, so we've got gold on top of white, and that gold is a shimmery sort of a gold, so I'll put that there. Tends to go with most collections. Doesn't that look great? Then we have smoke grey. So this smoky grey colour is very grown up, very soft grey, so again a muted tone, and that's why it works well with the main collection. I'm going to take that pink one away to give you an idea of how they look. There you go, so that's smoke. Then we have mint. Now mint is a lighter green than the greens in the collection. It's sort of a lighter version of the background found in the large flowers, and maybe close to this little tiny flash of colour here, but it's still possibly a little bit lighter. It goes well because it's another muted shade. So that's mint. Then we have teal. So teal is very close to many of the blues in this collection. Pull it round. There we go. So this one is very close to the background on here and on this one down here. So teal, another great mixer for this collection. And then finally we have the apple. So this is the one from the middle of the Lone Star Quilt. There we go. So that's quite close to the daffodils and to the large orangey gold, yellowy gold flowers that appear on some of the prints. As with the Kona prints, you can buy these twists as a bundle in their own right or as a bundle with the main fabrics. You can also buy a bundle with all the Konas and the twists and the main fabrics, and that's the most economical way to buy these fabrics. And you can, one of the options is to buy them as a jelly roll, so you would only get a few of every single print, and that might be a great base for making your quilt as you go log cabin quilt. So we hope you found that useful. Please do share images of your makes with us on Instagram and Facebook. We really love sharing your makes because they inspire all of us to try new things. I hope to see you again soon. Bye bye for now.